Over 99% of people have no idea what I just signed, while the other 1% may have had their suspicions confirmed when I signed yes. This pantsuit and lipstick does fulfill my dreams of being a power lesbian. While I may be staying within cliched boundaries, some are busy boldly battling to break communication boundaries between deaf and speaking communities. Scientific American April 2016 reports, 2 University of Washington students have developed gloves to revolutionize communicating with ASL called Sign Aloud, which has allowed hand gestures that correspond to words and phrases from ASL to be translated instantly to English through a speaker. Project developer Naveed Azodi pleads to ABC News April 29, 2016. Those who are deaf communicate primarily using sign language, while the rest of the world communicates verbally, putting the deaf and mute at a disadvantage. But access to communication is a basic fundamental human right, and every single person deserves to be part of the global community. We'll look at Sign Aloud, which could lend a helping hand and ear in bridging the communication gap between the hearing and the hard of hearing. First, we'll examine the process of how these gloves, well, fit like a glove. Second, we'll explore challenges that may force us to hang up the gloves. And third, we'll look to a future where language barriers can be torn down further, because if the glove fits, we must commit. In 1817, French teacher Laurent Clerc founded the American School for the Deaf, developing with his students a new dialect, American Sign Language. And the process for Sign Aloud hopes to make sure ASL will no longer fall on deaf ears. The World Federation of the Deaf last accessed January 19, 2017 calculates over 70 million people worldwide use some form of sign language as their native or mother tongue. The U.S. Department of Health, December 15, 2016 adds, 1 in 8 people in the United States aged 12 years or older has hearing loss in both ears. For the over 1 million deaf Americans, ASL gives them a voice, making it an incredible tool, but an isolating one, ranking as just the 8th most popular second language in high school, accounting for only 41,000 students. Recognizing the disparity between gesture-based language and verbal communication as a sign of the times, University of Washington dorm mates Naveed Azodi, a leader in student government, and Thomas Pryor, head of the robotics team, developed Sign Aloud. Communications of the Association for Computing Machinery, April 13, 2016 explains, each glove contains sensors that record hand position and movement, sending data wirelessly via Bluetooth to a central computer. The computer analyzes the information, and if the data matches a gesture programmed into the database, the associated word or phrase is spoken through a speaker. Azodi's personal experience inspired the invention, as he tells the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, April 28, 2016. Until I was 7 years old, I didn't speak. So for the first years of my life, I used nonverbal communication. We set out to make it more accessible to a larger audience. Pryor describes their prototype as lightweight, compact, and more on the hands, but ergonomic enough to use as an everyday accessory. The University of Washington agrees, announcing on April 12, 2016, that the 2 undergrads won the Lemelson MIT Student Prize for $10,000. Not bad for what started as a $100 prototype. Laurent Clerc faced challenges founding the American School for the Deaf, including 1, resistance from his students, 2, lack of linguistic compatibility, and 3, translation issues, similar to challenges facing Sign Aloud, or so I've heard. The gloves have been met with backlash from the deaf community, who argue this handheld discourse decoder perpetuates autism. An open letter from the University of Washington Linguistics Department, May 23, 2016, clarifies, autism is the belief that hearing, or auditory people, are superior to those who aren't, and assumes a deaf person's happiness depends on acquiring fluency in hearing culture. NPR, May 17, 2016, argues that because the gloves can't translate spoken English to ASL, it creates a one-way street where the deaf person is responsible for accommodating the standards of auditory communication. In addition to winning over deaf culture, this one-way street has another roadblock to overcome because the current configuration is only compatible with American Sign Language. The Huffington Post, April 28, 2016 explains, that despite common misconceptions, ASL is not a universal language for the deaf, but just one of 127 sign languages worldwide, and only the fourth most commonly used. The World Federation of the Deaf last accessed February 2nd, 2017 speaks to these hurdles, reasoning each sign language has its own grammar, multiple dialects, and is used differently in formal and informal situations, making universal translation nearly impossible. Finally, Sign Aloud may still be unable to accurately and efficiently translate the one language it was designed for, ASL. The Daily Dot, May 27, 2016 articulates that in ASL, single signs have more than one meaning, relying on facial expression and body language to distinguish them, which are linguistic features the gloves don't feature. Translation is not as simple as the word-for-word replacement method the gloves employ, as spoken English is more related to Chinese than a visual language like ASL, making Sign Aloud too handy, so to speak. Laurent Clerc's school eventually found favor with students after 1, collaboration, 2, expansion, and 3, further education, just like the promising future awaiting Sign Aloud. I hope you're all ears. So listen up. Project coordinators Naveed Azodi and Thomas Pryor have heard critics' claims of autism and plan to answer them as the project pushes forward. Tech Mike, April 15th, 2016 validates the industry's inventors are working closer with the deaf community, with Azodi recognizing this is their culture. Understanding that is the first step in all of this. Through this collaboration, Azodi and Pryor plan to slim down the design, expand the sign database, and merge with mobile devices so the deaf can communicate clearly on their own terms. Second, Sign Aloud looks to transcend translation technology to treat traditionally tough traumas. NBC News, May 23, 2016 reveals the gloves may aid rehabilitation for the over 200,000 stroke and brain injury patients in the U.S. annually afflicted with aphasia, which damages language comprehension and formulation. When aphasia victims begin speech therapy, verbal communication is strained for both patients and caretakers. But Sign Aloud's format allows for a reconfiguration from ASL to a simplistic gesture system, opening a path to communication that was previously lost. Finally, Sign Aloud may move beyond people living in a world without sound to help those living in a world without language. The Autism Research Institute last accessed February 3, 2017 discloses that learning sign language provides opportunities for non-speaking children to eventually form functional words through verbal imitation. Unfortunately, parents increasingly rely on computerized communication programs, and kids are speaking less. Yet Sign Aloud creates an alternative where sign and speech are combined, so those without a voice may speak for the first time. Today, we were first handed the process of Sign Aloud. Second, we threw our hands up in frustration at the challenges. And third, we saw the sign, which opened up our eyes to the future. Sign language gloves are the next step in intercultural communication, allowing all people to gain equal ground socially, professionally, and linguistically. History's first interpreter was a Mexican woman named Doña Maria, who aided Hernan Cortez in his conquest of Latin America in the 16th century. 500 years later, we're ready to take the next leap, where the translator becomes part of us. And that's a good sign.